Everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Scripts. I'm your host, Will Tuft with PioneerRx and RedSail Technologies, and today another crossover episode where we're bringing in some voices from RedSail Technologies. Andy Maurer, the captain of the ship, the CEO of RedSail Technologies, and Josh Howland, president of Pharmacy Systems. And thank you guys for joining us.
Good to be here.
So, Josh, I feel like most of our users are probably familiar with the name Josh Howland from years of service with PioneerRx and now representing users from across multiple PMS brands, including BestRx and the QS1 suite. So thanks for joining us again. I almost feel like there's no introduction needed for Mr. Howland. And Andy, you may be more of a new face to some of our listeners, so fairly new addition to the RedSail Technologies team. I guess a year and a half or so, something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep. So I joined the board of RedSail about 18 months ago and became CEO last July.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about the path that leads one to be the CEO of RedSail Technologies.
So I've been in pharmacy my entire career, not intentionally, but just kind of worked out that way. So I started out doing some banking work and specifically worked on a deal team that worked on pharmacy deals exclusively. And then I did consulting, and I did pharmacy consulting specifically for about 5 years, primarily for health systems and other types of providers that were doing pharmacy in an administrative setting, where they were administering drugs versus dispensing drugs. And then I started my entrepreneurial portion of my career. So I co-founded a company called Macrohelix, which is a 340B TPA. Still exists to this day under that name, owned by McKesson now. And so we started that business literally from my dining room table, I tell people, and that's the truth. And it kind of grew in spite of our ignorance about how to run a business. And then had an opportunity to work with a private equity firm called Francisco Partners to co-found a company called Rx, which operated specialty pharmacies across the country at different health systems. So we were trying to enable health systems to compete to serve the patients where they were largely the prescriber of these drugs, and the drugs historically had been then filled by all the PBM-owned specialty pharmacies. And so Trellis was geared towards enabling health systems to capture those prescriptions and continue to serve those patients post diagnosis and post prescribing of the drug. And Francisco Partners is an investor in RedSail, and so they asked if I would be interested in getting back involved with the business, and so that was the reason for joining on the board first, and then CEO as of last summer.
Wow. Yeah. So I feel like all of our listeners probably collective eyebrows went up because those are two very well-known companies. That's quite a pedigree.
Thank you.
What I love about Connect so far is just seeing everybody around that I know are top performers in independent community pharmacy.
Not a better place to be. A lot of forward-thinking people.
It was pretty much game-changing for care planning and medicine.
Allowed our business to grow in so many ways, it's unimaginable.
You get to interface with other pharmacy owners that have the same ambitions and desires that you have for pushing the future of pharmacy.
If you're not here, you're missing out.
Register today for Connect 2025 in Grapevine, Texas.
So working with Francisco Partners, that's one thing I've noticed in my time being involved with Francisco Partners through RedSail Technologies is definitely that continued relationship with a lot of the team members who have maybe been at multiple different companies under that umbrella. But it definitely it seems like kind of a neat part of that culture where they nurture those relationships and definitely comes back full circle.
That's right. Yep, that's for sure.
So, when we talk about private equity, I know for independent pharmacies, that is not always just the greatest initial feeling.
No.
But anytime I talk to pharmacies, at trade shows or just out and about on phone calls, it seems like they always ask, in a hushed voice, like, so, hey, how is it really? And it's been great. A lot of support from the top, and it's been really neat. So how has private equity kind of influenced RedSail Technologies' direction? It's kind of interesting because RedSail Technologies didn't necessarily exist, without private equity, but a lot of the companies within definitely are well known and have operated in different management structures.
Yeah. Well, private equity is a huge category, and there's all sorts of different types of private equity organizations, private equity firms that do a variety of different things. So there's, I think the ones that give the category a bad rap are those that come in and buy a business and kind of gut it, and offshore everything and squeeze every nickel out of it. And then there's on the opposite side of the spectrum is kind of the growth investor private equity, where they're looking to deploy additional dollars behind the business to help it to expand, to reach new markets, to offer new capabilities, et cetera. And then there's everything in between. It's kind of a spectrum. And so my experience, frankly, is very limited in that I've only worked with growth investor private equity. I've never worked with one of the chop shops, and I frankly have no interest in working with one of them. And there are plenty of those in all categories. So, but at the end of the day, good private equity investors are really a very helpful partner with a business like RedSail. There's a variety of things, and we can talk about it here today, that we've been able to do and investments we've been able to make that the components of RedSail, whether it's Pioneer or QS1 or BestRx or any of the other businesses that comprise RedSail, they would never have been able to do it on their own. Different things we've built internally, some of the acquisitions we've made that have expanded capabilities and lowered prices for customers. We just wouldn't have had the wherewithal to do it, or frankly, probably the appetite to do it if it was not for the investors encouraging it. And so from my perspective, our two private equity investors, Francisco Partners and Leonard Green, have been terrific partners, not to overuse that word, and terrific advocates for the business. They're both very, very seasoned investors in healthcare and specifically in pharmacy. They've done a lot of investing in pharmacy-related businesses, and so they're educated about the space. They're educated about the market. They frankly share my disdain for PBMs. And so, a lot of the things that we're trying to do with this business, they're fully on board with, and there's no real debate. It's more of debate about how quickly we can do certain things, how big of investments we should make, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, anytime there's a change in ownership, there's, fears and anxieties, and also opportunity. Howland can probably speak to, how that investment has actually come down to the ground floor here with development and with investment in some of the products. Can you tell me a little bit, Josh, about how maybe, development cycles have changed or just what's been different since there has been that RedSail Technologies backing?
Yeah, and I think very much like you, at a lot of trade shows, I get people in the side and be like, how's it going?
Yeah.
And some of that is probably seeks back to like 7 or 8 years ago. We had a big competitor get purchased by a private equity firm, and they had a couple of early missteps. And our marketing team jumped on it. And so we were like, look at what they've done. And, some of that success feeds back into like, oh, is it really that bad? And it's maybe a con for some people, but I think if we hadn't been purchased by private equity, I probably still wouldn't be here, because it felt like we didn't have the ability to do something innovative and like off the book, right? Like we had this concept early with Pioneer of like this hedgehog concept of you stick with what you know and you do only that. And I think the single biggest change with private equity coming in is like they're willing to throw some dollars behind some what sounds like a crazy tangential idea and say like, what if we did X? And you're like, well, I didn't think about it like that, but it might work. I always go back to when Craig and Francis sat down with us when we were first talking about being acquired by RedSail, and they said, we think owning a switch is like the thing. And at the time, Jeff and I looked at him and were like, why would you want to own a water company? And you know, like looking back on that time, like 5 years ago, it was so naive not to like, it seems obvious now of why you want to be in a switch. The other two are owned by giant corporations, and now we have the only independent switch in the country. So I think a lot of that around like those types of ideas and those types of investment dollars just wouldn't have been possible without Francisco Partners and now Leonard Green coming in and saying, here's some dollars, go take a big swing, and 10 of them might not pay out, but if one does, then we're gold. And there's some, it allows you to think differently and do some other things that you wouldn't have done without that backing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned Leonard Green. I remember at the beginning of last summer, you know, the press release went out, and there is, again, anytime there's change, there's a range of emotions that come with that. So tell me a little bit about what that means, because there was this initial question that customers were coming to me with was, oh my gosh, you know, RedSail Technologies was sold. What does this mean? So tell me a little bit about like what that actually means and how RedSail Technologies continues with Francisco Partners and what Leonard Green means in that equation.
Yeah. So first of all, any company, the ownership evolves over time, right? People, even a family-owned business, it might pass from one generation to the next, or to in-laws or what have you. And so in public companies, obviously, the shares and ownership is changing every day, every minute of every day. In our case, the way private equity works, in most cases, in Francisco Partners' case, they raise money in distinct buckets of funds. So they raise a distinct fund that has a mandate to go invest over a period of time with certain constraints around the size of the investments and types of investments. And so they had invested 5.5 years ago, and that investment time horizon, well, there's no fixed date to it, was getting to the kind of the tail end of that particular fund, and those investors, and when they needed return of their investment dollars. And by the way, most of their investment dollars come from pension funds and endowments and those types of organizations that are deploying their resources to earn a return for their future obligations. So nonetheless, they were at the tail end, but they had a lot of confidence in the future of this business, the future of independent pharmacy, the opportunities to expand to provide more services and capabilities to their core customer base. And so they didn't want to exit the business, but at the same time, they needed to manage this dynamic with this particular fund. And so what they did was effectively sold their shares from that fund and repurchased their shares in a brand new fund that they had just raised. So it basically just extended the time horizon in which they can be involved in the business. And alongside of that, because we have this vision of investing in a variety of other capabilities, they certainly could have funded it all themselves, but they decided to take a co-investor partner, and so we went out and talked to a lot of different groups and had a lot of interest. There's just a lot of confidence in both this business and this space in general, and then selected Leonard Green to be that partner. So they're a co-investor, they're an equal investor with Francisco Partners. So they're a great partner as well. I had not worked with them previously, but they've proven to be really a terrific advocate for the business and tremendously helpful alongside Francisco Partners.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like the takeaway on that is that RedSail Technologies was, proven, and Francisco Partners not only didn't sell but doubled down on on their investment. So that's a great for the outlook. One of the things that I hear in pharmacy is that profit isn't a 4-letter word. We all go to work for a variety of reasons, but at the end of the day, making a profit kind of drives business decisions from top to bottom.
Okay.
So, in private equity and in the RedSail Technologies structure, how are they able to balance the financial goals of private equity with serving independent pharmacy and keeping that grassroots connection?
Yeah. So and it's a fair question. So first of all, like the business doesn't pay dividends to the private equity firms or distribute profits or anything. All the investment or all the profits that the business makes get reinvested in the business. And so that's been the case for the duration of Francisco Partners' involvement. It's the case today because we have probably more growth opportunities than we have, frankly, dollars to invest in them. So we've got to make trade-offs, and so we want to preserve all of the kind of dry powder that we can to make those investments. A growing kind of healthy business, RedSail being a healthy business and a growing business, is good for our customers. We can see the alternatives. There's several examples out there where the businesses are struggling, they're shrinking or losing customers, and they then make choices that negatively affect those customers. They underinvest in support. They don't build new features. They don't have integrations. They don't have all the things that we're investing in every day. And that flows down to the customer experience and ultimately the health of the customer's business as well. And so for us, being a healthy business that can provide great support, that can invest in new features, that can invest in new integrations, et cetera, is really important, and it provides value to the customer. Separately, our business has been growing very healthy, or it has had a healthy rate of growth, but it's been coming from adding customers, so people choosing RedSail products and services, as well as from the ability to expand the portfolio of what we're doing and people opting into those additional capabilities. It isn't coming from us in general taking price increases. There are certain parts of our business where we've held prices perfectly flat for the duration of Francisco Partners ownership. There's some where we've had to pass through prices from third parties, like computer servers and stuff. We're at the whim of Dell and others. But where we can, we've been holding prices flat or frankly even lowering prices. If you look at what we've done recently or announced recently with credit cards and RedSail Pay, that whole investment was to be able to provide customers with lower prices than what they're paying today. So our growth is not coming at the expense of customers. It's bringing new dollars into the ecosystem. It's expanding capabilities to provide more options for customers, and then they can choose whether those options provide value for them or not. And so that's probably a long answer to a very simple question, but ultimately, the business is growing. The private equity firms obviously want to see it grow, and they're depending on it to grow, and they're holding me accountable to make sure that happens. But they're not. There's no pressure to grow at the expense of our customers, where we win and they lose. It's we win and they win, and that's been the case for the duration of their ownership.
Yeah, I actually think that's the most important, and frankly the reason why most of us are here, right? We believe in independent pharmacy, and we believe in the practice of pharmacy, and we're very cognizant at the end of the day, our customers need to be healthy for us to be healthy, and they need to have patients for them to be healthy. So it's a nice case of everybody has aligned incentives in this case. And I think that was super important what Andy just said of it's not growing at the expense of our customers, right? Like our goal is to grow our value to our customers, and that's what makes us healthy. And I like working in a company where we have those types of incentives.
Yeah, for sure. So, Josh, last time we talked, we really focused a lot on the PMS platforms that are available. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about those, but just in case somebody didn't listen to the last episode, can you kind of just give me an overview of what the pharmacy systems at RedSail Technologies kind of encompasses, and maybe a little bit about that strategy?
Sure. And it's funny, we started joking about what we were going to call the strategy 6 years ago now, and we've never come up with anything better, but effectively we kind of call it the hamburger strategy, right? And the meat of that hamburger is the pharmacy management system. In this case, we've got, QS1, which is a retail and long-term care option. Now we have BestRx as of last March. PioneerRx, and then we're working on and currently, in the beta stage of Axis, which is our cloud-based multi-tenant solution for initially for long-term care, but built to go into enterprise type environments. And our kind of goal there, and again, is to grow those platforms where appropriate and say, I don't care what kind of meat you like. If you like turkey, you can get turkey. If you like beef, you can get beef. But the important part is those PMS systems work with all of the other types of investments and tools that we're working on building right now, so that, if you pick Pioneer and PowerLine and RedSail Pay, all of those things work phenomenally well together. But they could also work in separate and independent spaces as well. So I think that part's important. But at the core of that, you won't see us coming in and saying, we bought BestRx, let's just swallow it into the bigger Pioneer. There are absolutely valid reasons why a pharmacy would perform better on BestRx versus Pioneer and vice versa. So our goal is to make sure that the pharmacies have the right tools available to do the jobs they need to do, not to make them pick which tool they want.
Yeah. Funny, I was talking with my neighbor last night who's a dentist, and, they were asking what I do, and I was kind of explaining, the trade shows and the different pharmacy systems. And he said, are pharmacies like dentist offices where they're forcing them all to get on certain softwares? And I said, sir, they would go back to paper before being forced to any software solution. So.
You're probably right about that.
I will. Let me add one thing to what Josh said. So just to tie it back to one of our earlier talking discussion, or one of our other points. So Josh mentioned that Access is our new platform that's coming to market here soon. It'll be available broadly in the very first part of 2026 to any customers that would like it. As Josh mentioned, that's a new long-term care solution. But in full disclosure, we've spent over $30 million developing that from the ground up, and that's an investment that private equity funded. And so we've made zero return on that. And obviously, we've got to build the best mousetrap and win business once that product is launched. And so that's what we've been focused on. But that's the type of investment that Francisco Partners and Leonard Green have enabled and funded that would have not been possible for whether it be QS1 or Pioneer or any of the components of RedSail on their own under kind of previous ownership. So it's a good illustration of one of many significant investments the business has made to kind of further the capabilities that we're providing the customers. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the big fears when people think about private equity is, just running very lean and cutting wherever possible, not necessarily making that huge technology investment, which, we've seen other technologies, try to come out with a new software and it's such a big undertaking that, sometimes that just doesn't even fully roll out or rolls right back. And, without the resources of some backing like RedSail Technologies has, it's amazing that anyone is able to actually get one to market with, all of the challenges that are involved in that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge investment, and it's one of those things where if building a new pharmacy management system was easy, there would be a whole bunch on the market, and it's even owning others to look at and say, how did this work and how do you change it? Building a new one's really, really hard, and for the the private equity firms and the leadership teams to give that kind of runway. It's bonkers. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I don't know. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, can you do it? I would have said, I don't know. And that's a lot of faith and a lot of dollars to put in behind something like that. And the nice part is all of the technology that we're using to build those things filters down into other areas, right? For example, a lot of the stuff that we're building in BestRx and Pioneer today use a lot of those web-based services. So you're starting to see the fruits of all the investments that we've made in Axis as well filtered down to, your Pioneers and your Best RXs and how we build apps going forward and things like that. So it's a long-term strategy that makes a ton of sense. And Andy's right. We would have never been able to do that as a standalone company.
Yeah, I think that there's probably so much of that kind of foundational development that goes on behind the scenes that maybe the end users can't, fully see in their day to day, but tremendous amount of time and effort and money going into building that solid foundation that all of those technologies can grow from. So you mentioned some of the other products outside PMS platforms, and I think that's where it really gets exciting with RedSail Technologies. You get to see not only the software brands that you're familiar with grow and flourish and find new ways to serve, but other products that can be used with those, can be used even with some other PMSs. So it's really interesting to see. You mentioned PowerLine, which I feel like last year really got to shine, given all of the security issues and switch issues we had last year when our customers were still able to transmit claims. So I feel like PowerLine's probably one that most of our pharmacies are probably familiar with. So Andy, can you tell me a little bit about what the big picture for having a private switch would be?
Yeah. Well, so we've just kind of scratched the surface, right? We've got parity with Relay and Change as far as the switch having the same capabilities and vouchers and edits and so on and so forth. But there's a variety of things that we can do and that are on the roadmap for development that pair the pharmacy management software with the switch in innovative ways. And frankly, some of those are to drive value for the pharmacies, and some of them is to bring in dollars from pharma to help provide additional revenue streams to pharmacies. And so I'll give you an example of something that's under development right now. We launched RxCash Plus last year, which is a cash management capability because so many of our pharmacies, frankly, do a pretty poor job of keeping up with what they should charge for cash prescriptions for cash paying customers. And in many cases, they're underpricing relative to their peers in the market and so on. And so one other thing that's emerged and continues to grow is how often PBMs are partnering with discount cards. And so they're automatically shunting prescriptions from the normal adjudication process to a discount card. And then, of course, there's a negative remit to the pharmacy. Well, of course, our pharmacies don't like that for obvious reasons. It's kind of nonsense. And so one of the things that we are developing is a capability for those customers that want it to auto reverse those and rebill them as cash. And so it doesn't change the price paid by the patient, but it eliminates the negative rebate. And so we'll be launching that, but obviously we can't do that if we didn't have our own switch. And so that's likely to come out later this year or early next year. So it's still kind of being developed and engineered, but those are the types of things that, frankly, you can't do without having PowerLine, or we can't do without having PowerLine because it relies upon the technology that exists in that network. And then there's other things that we're doing with pharma. So, for example, when vouchers are applied automatically, frankly, the drug company doesn't really get any credit. That there might be information in the remit that the pharmacist or the tech isn't going to read because you're filling prescriptions. Obviously, the patient isn't aware, and so the drug manufacturer doesn't get a lot of credit. And frankly, they're probably willing to compensate pharmacies to provide them credit in terms of making patients aware that AstraZeneca or Pfizer or whomever paid for part of their copay. And so again, pairing the PMS system, whether it's Best RX or IQ or Pioneer with PowerLine, we have the ability to start to do some of those things. And so we're having conversations with various pharma partners now about what type of messaging they might be interested in having delivered, as an example.
Yeah, with the switch, I think that's so important. The ability to rebill those. Like I said, I know in 2024 we saw so many pharmacies getting hit with those GoodRx bins and that Call Saver Plus program and these different programs that are just happening behind the scenes, And then 2 months in, they realize, oh man, we've lost, so much money, and had to manually look back and find those and review those. So great to see that. I think it's really neat to see how the PowerLine Switch is going to continue to grow and bring those new services. The other thing you mentioned was the Cash Plus, and it's funny where, pharmacies spend every claim trying to, get a fair reimbursement. And when they are given the opportunity to kind of set their own price, rarely with those cash claims, a lot of times pharmacies have, again, oversimplified price schedules, and usually, like you said, they're not charging too much. They're undershooting market value because one simple equation just isn't going to work across all of your NDCs in the pharmacy. So that's definitely something that I think is overlooked, but a huge opportunity just to stay relevant and make sure that you're not cutting yourself short. Like, I've seen a few different pharmacies share their experience with that. Can you share some of the feedback that you've gotten on how pharmacies are seeing a change in their cash flow?
Yeah. So across our installed base, about 20% of all prescriptions that all the RedSail customers fill are cash. And when I say cash, I'm talking pure cash, not discount cards, not anything paid for at all by any third party. And that percentage has actually, if anything, gone up a little bit over time. And what we have found is it's not a consistent underpricing or overpricing, but there are instances where customers are overpricing, and there's many instances where they're underpricing. And when I say underpricing, I'm talking about what the underlying cost of the drug is, what their labor and overhead cost is of filling a prescription, and then what other pharmacies are charging, frankly. And so, there's all sorts of reasons why you might want to be the low cost provider or the high cost provider or in the median, and so. But it's a lot of work to maintain that, and so we've seen, especially in organizations that have a decent number of pharmacies, that they've got dedicated people spending time trying to manage that manually on an ongoing basis, and so our average customer on RxCash Plus, and Josh, keep me honest here, I think is they're when we apply whatever formula they decide they want to apply, which we can do a very, very bespoke set of rules for individual pharmacies. Their price goes up about $3 per prescription for cash prescriptions. And so that may not sound like a lot, but obviously depending on your volume, and if that 20% of volume holds true, or whatever percentage it is for your pharmacy, that can be tens of thousands of dollars per year, which of course falls directly to your bottom line. And so for us, messaging that to pharmacies, it's, hey, there's a pricing opportunity here, not to gouge your patients, but to just be in line with the cost of doing business and the overall cost that other pharmacies are charging for the same prescription and the same services. And so when they see that and then see the lift, it's a very, very straightforward value proposition that's very compelling. And frankly, the biggest reason people say that they don't opt in is, oh, I've got cash prices already set. And I think there's just kind of a lack of awareness in many cases of what the market dynamics are in their particular geography. And so that's I think that the challenge in articulating the value is like, oh, I have a cash price loaded in Pioneer or Invest. I don't need this. But the reality is that there's very, very few customers that are consistently managing cash prices in a way that kind of aligns with the market trends.
Yeah. And it's funny is, and Will and I hear probably the same stories over and over again about pharmacies trying to, consistently make sure they're pricing their clinical services correctly, that they're getting reimbursed appropriately for vaccines with administration fees and things like that. And yet they set their price for cash once and forget about it, right? Like all of these things, like you're running a very, very low margin business these days. Like all the juice counts, right? And that's kind of where the Cash Plus program comes in, is like you don't have to constantly be thinking about how you're changing your cash pricing. It's just like Medicare pricing rules. They get updated twice a year. Somebody has to load them, and if you don't load them, you're leaving a huge amount of dollars on the table. It's it's the same concept.
So I think RxCash Plus is something that hopefully all of our PMS users are familiar with and have heard that messaging. Is it available outside of the RedSail ecosystem currently?
It is, yeah. So you don't need you don't have to be on a RedSail pharmacy software. We have customers that are on other softwares that are using it as well. We've focused kind of our marketing efforts towards the RedSail base, but we've organically kind of picked up customers that were not outside of or outside of RedSail. So it would work with any pharmacy, and it has, I think, the same value proposition regardless of what software is being run.
Yeah, nice. Good to have an easy button. Just add a third party, fire it off, and just kind of process it like any other claim, right?
Yep.
So you also mentioned some things happening at the Switch as far as working with branded drugs. And I think that's another area in pharmacy that has almost, gotten a negative connotation, whereas, the opportunities with branded drugs may seem like there's a limited reimbursement model. So how is RedSail Technologies trying to improve that atmosphere and turn the tides on brand name dispensing?
Yeah. I would say there's kind of three different things we're trying to do. One is, I guess, in a kind of bespoke way, that obviously vaccines are branded, and we run a variety of programs on behalf of pharmaceutical manufacturers for vaccines. And that one, the math is, I think, pretty straightforward, right? If you have patients in your pharmacy that meet the criteria and should be vaccinated for shingles or RSV or pneumococcal virus, all of that drives additional revenue and positive margin for your pharmacy if they're getting vaccinated in your pharmacy. And so if the manufacturer of those vaccines is willing to pay for programs to promote vaccine administration and specifically target your patients and you opt into that, I think that's a net good thing. And so our data shows that those pharmacies that are opting into those programs and executing those messages to patients fill more vaccines or administer more vaccines and realize a revenue lift and a margin lift as a result. As it relates to the kind of the broader branded category, there's a couple of things that we're doing. So one is there's a growing number, and I think we're just scratching the surface of the size and scale of this, but there's a growing number of branded manufacturers that are willing to do programs that compensate pharmacies in some small ways around adherence and other types of initiatives to drive certain patient behavior. So it's an opportunity to have some new revenue from pharma, and obviously we're going to continue to push them to compensate pharmacies more and more for that. And so that's one category where there's some new dollars flowing into pharmacies. And again, we can't force the pharmacies to participate, so it's incumbent upon all of the RedSail customers to opt in and actually take action on those programs. And then we're just starting to have conversations with various pharmaceutical manufacturers about direct purchasing opportunities and other ways to potentially buy at perhaps more advantageous pricing. It's a little bit of a crapshoot because everyone pays slightly different prices right now, but we're trying to make sure that if we do launch some of these programs, that it provides value for substantially all or the vast majority of our customers. So I would say that those are three categories where we're trying to bring either cost savings or additional dollars paid for by pharma to our independent customers.
Wow, yeah. Josh, can you kind of expand on that second option, what that looks like at the pharmacy level? With the PMSs, where we are seeing some various workflow alerts. What does that mean at pharmacy level as far as bringing in additional dollars, but also proving the value of independent pharmacy to maybe free up additional dollars down the line with some of those manufacturers?
Mm-hmm. So like Andy said, most of the things that we've seen so far that are coming up in the pharmacy systems are around driving vaccinations, right? So giving an employee, typically a pharmacist, an alert saying, hey, Josh walked in, it's time for a shingles vaccine. Here's some, information around it. Now, we all know that there's an adoption curve, right? Some people are going to be banging down your door to get that vaccine. Some people are going to only make one time to be asked, and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then there's a larger portion of the population that they're not vaccine hesitant. They're busy, they're, whatever. And it takes 2 or 3 shots to ask them. And so those alerts just saying, hey, ask Josh about a shingles vaccine. The whole point is get 1 or 2 of those, and then you get that vaccine. The shingles vaccine itself drives a decent margin for most pharmacies. The administration fee drives some, positive revenue for them as well. And that starts to set the habit, right? What we want to be able to do is put enough of those things that matter in front of the pharmacist to take action on. And pharma has this, they have anti-kickback regulations. Like, that's a very, very regulated part. So they have to be very careful about what they can pay for. They want to be able to move, like, pharma's goal is to sell the right drug to the right person. They want to be able to pay people to do that. And so those are types of avenues that we build in to get people habitated to, when you see this alert, you take an action. And those types of actions can, our view is that those types of actions can drive positive revenue for the pharmacies.
Yeah, I would definitely try to harness that same CPESN spirit of, proving your value and pharmacies constantly want to get paid for the work that they're doing. And this is such a great opportunity to prove that value and encourage those additional payment sources outside of the PBM reach, through interesting channels with manufacturers. So it's pretty exciting to see. I would just encourage pharmacies to, be early adapters to help with that movement.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is one of the things that we were adamant about is that those types of interactions aren't different from the way you handle a CPSN care planning session with the patient. They're not going to be different than how we build other tools in the future to have a pharmacist or a technician do something on behalf of their patient. So it's all going to be in workflow. It's all going to be the same thing, so you don't have to jump to a separate portal or you don't have to go have a separate screen open. Our goal there is to drive value to the pharmacy without interrupting or causing disruptions to their normal workflow. So again, that's an area where it's really important to own all of those things in the spot, because we can program that into BestRx. We can program that into Pioneer. We can make APIs available to other pharmacy systems to be able to do those types of things, but it has to be done in workflow.
Yeah. So moving to another product that you mentioned, I think every pharmacy can really look for, ways to generate new income, new ideas. It's really fun to go to the trade shows and see something shiny and take it back and want to implement it. But there's some fundamental services that you have at every single pharmacy, every single business really, where you can move the needle. And I think a big one would definitely be payment processing. And so you kind of hinted at that earlier. Andy, can you tell me a little bit more about what's happened in the past week or two?
Yeah. So last week we announced RedSail Pay, which is something we've been working on for a while, but it's ready to launch now. And so the concept here is that all of our customers have to take credit cards and debit cards in some form. And that whole industry, as I've personally gotten more educated about it, is so opaque, and the fees and the surcharges and the surprise compliance paperwork that happens that has short turnaround times and so forth is just hugely disruptive and hugely costly for our customers. And unlike the big chains, our customers are typically not in a position to go out and negotiate great credit card rates on their own, and so they get frankly taken advantage of. They get charged fees that are well in excess of what other merchants are paying for similar volumes, and it becomes a huge cost of doing business. And it is a category where that vendor wins and the pharmacy loses. That's it. That's the math. And so, we had kind of had it on the roadmap for a while of like, geez, this is something we should do something about. And we had looked at a bunch of different options. We had looked at, working with existing vendors to lower rates, and just it became very obvious they had zero interest in doing that. And so we made an investment at the end of 2024 in a business called Empros. So we acquired Empros in October. And we bought them for two reasons. One is they've got a phenomenal point of sale platform that'll be used with Access going forward as that product launches. And separately, they had the ability to process credit cards and debit card payments. And so we've had to do a bunch of work to integrate their platforms into Pioneer, Invest, and IQ. But it's ready to go now. And so the message to the market and the message to all of our customers is, no matter what rates you're paying, no matter who your credit card vendor is, we will lower it. And that is direct savings to your pharmacy and your organization. And it helps to further that mission. And what I talked about earlier of, we're investing in the business in ways that RedSail wins and the pharmacy wins. So we hopefully can remove some friction with the outside vendors, some hassle factor. We can lower rates for the customer so their businesses are healthier, and so it's good for both of us. The only one it's not good for is the external vendors, and that's just fine with me. But we've got great uptake. That's, like I said, it's been a source of a lot of frustration and support calls and so forth historically. So we launched last week, and I think so far we've got almost 450 pharmacies opted in, which is a phenomenal. It's like the fastest growth rate of anything we've launched ever in the history of RedSail. But there's a lot more work to do, and so we will continue to do a lot of marketing, and you'll hear us talk about it at the Connect conference and so forth. But we hope that the savings is compelling. We the handful of customers that I've looked at personally, we've provided savings that are in the tens of thousands of dollars in some cases per year. So hopefully that's seen by the market as something that's very, very compelling.
Yeah. And so if I'm a business owner, I'm constantly looking for ways to save money, but I'm also going to be looking for tried and true technologies that are going to be consistent. So what would you say to a pharmacy owner who's maybe hesitant because this is a brand new credit card processor? Maybe I need to give them some time to get the structure down. Is this a brand new entity, or is this something that's been pressure tested out in the field?
Yeah. I mean, we looked at, frankly, that's a great kind of synopsis of how we thought about it as a management team. So we said, hey, should we just hire some people and figure out how to build this ourselves from scratch? And we could have done that. I'm sure we could have. It would have taken a lot longer. It would have been a lot more work and a lot more hassle. And so we decided that the better option was to go out and acquire a business that had been successfully doing it for pharmacies. So Empros has only worked for pharmacies, and they're a great business, great management team, great broader team. And so they have a significant number of customers that were not RedSail customers that were doing payments through them already, all pharmacies. So they know pharmacy, they know things like HSAs and FSAs and all of the kind of the intricacies that surround payments in pharmacy specifically. And so that's, so this is not a new capability. The capability that's new is, frankly, the integration between the Empros platform and the PMS systems and the point of sales that RedSail provides to customers. And so that was frankly from when we acquired Empros till now, it was, what is that, 5 months worth of work to do all the technical integration, but the capability itself has been working for a long time on the Empros side.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, we did a lot of extra work to make sure that the vast majority of pharmacies don't have to change things like their SigPad, right? So it's not like you're getting you're not getting a new cash drawer, a new point of sale, a new SigPad, and all this other stuff. You're literally changing your contract and using all the same equipment you had before. So we know that equipment works because we've got 12,000 units in the field taking credit card payments today.
Yeah. And again, I think that speaks to, that investment in technology, because it would have been probably much easier and more profitable to say, yeah, absolutely, you just have to purchase a new SigPad with the encryption for, this pay method. So it seems like a lot of work went into going into, integrate existing technologies. And again, the easy button probably would have been, oh, you have to buy a new signature pad.
Yeah, that's for sure. Frankly, the easier button would have been for us to do nothing, and not make that investment. But it was clearly a pain point for our customers. And our goal, frankly, is we want our customers to be as financially healthy as possible. And this was low hanging fruit of us being able to move the needle on your businesses as a customer's bottom line. And every dollar we save you on credit card processing is a dollar that goes right to your bottom line. And so that was the motivating factor.
Yeah. So, man, we're already creeping up on time. I feel like I could keep you guys here for another hour. But, looking at those products that we've added so far, I probably wouldn't have predicted a couple of those. So is there anything interesting on the horizon that you can share?
Yes. We're gonna spend a lot of money this year, and into 26 and 27. We're gonna spend it in two ways. We're gonna build a bunch of things organically. Obviously, we're continuing to invest in access. The launch of that is going to be significant. So if you're a long-term care pharmacy and you're on Prime Care right now, it'll be like going from a Chevy to a Ferrari. There's that much difference in terms of the platforms and the capabilities and the usability and so forth. So that's a major initiative for us. There's several others that we're working on internally that I'll spare you the details of. Inorganic, meaning like acquisition wise, we're going to do a bunch of things there. So the two I'll highlight is one is personally, I've been a bit, I think, underwhelmed with what we've done historically in terms of apps and add-ons. And we've got kind of a little bit of a mess in terms of a whole variety of products we've acquired over time that we haven't really integrated. And so we've got so many products that overlap in the market, and they all have great features. They all have things that people would like us to improve upon. And so we're going to look for kind of best of breed in a variety of different categories and either build or buy best of breed. So you should expect that over the next 24 months as a customer that the capabilities that we have and the apps and the add-ons and integrations that are, and that the frankly, the level of quality of those is going to improve markedly. And so again, no, not trying to disparage what we've done historically, but I think that's one area where we have not been industry leading in many ways, and we can be, and so we will be. And so we'll do some stuff there. And then the other category, and this is kind of my personal pet peeve, is I frankly think e-prescribing and SureScripts has been exploitive as well. They're just as bad as the credit cards. It costs way too much for e-prescribing, and so they've had a monopoly forever. And so we're going to make some investments to try to disrupt that monopoly. And I'm not going to be shy about saying that out loud, and I would say that to them specifically. We're the second largest cost of us doing business after payroll is buying SureScripts e-prescribing, and that's ridiculous. So we're going to make investments there to stand up a competing e-prescribing network and move as much traffic to a lower cost network as possible for our pharmacies. And so, when we're successful with that'll result in lower e-prescribing costs for all of our pharmacies as well. So it's another area where there's an incumbent that has just kind of gotten fat and happy at the expense of our customers. And so we're gonna change that.
Yeah, I was hoping to get a strong hot take out of this podcast, and I think we just landed one.
Okay.
So, Josh, let me let you put Andy in the hot seat from the pharmacy software side. Is there a need? Is there a product or a service, or is there something on your wish list from your side of the business that you would really like to see?
I don't think so. And I want to caveat with all the things that Andy just said are in addition to the investments we've already committed to making across the PMS platforms, right? Like making support better. I've been going around calling this year the big fundamental, right? The Tim Duncan, we're just going to focus on speed, stability, and interfaces that our customers use every single day. The only thing I've got on my wish list, and this was my personal wish list, and the dev team is running with it because it's really exciting, is just automating a lot of the mundane things that pharmacies have to do, right? Like the fact that we're still using faxes in 2025 is kind of silly, but it still exists, right? So being able to take faxes and convert them into electronic prescriptions, for example, we're actually in QA on a product right now to be able to do that. And then my dream is to be able to automate data entry to 90+%, be able to take it from an electronic prescription, apply AI and automation to that, and be able to take it all the way through adjudication. And we're actually inching closer and closer to that. So if I can knock out those two and keep us stable and upgrade our interfaces this year, I think I'll be happy, and I think our customers are going to be pumped about it too.
Yeah. So I think I've got time for like one more question here. So I've got to think about the future from the standpoint of pharmacies that are using technology every day. It's constantly evolving. Just this year we had to pivot so quickly for the N3P requirements. And there's so many things constantly changing that it's hard to know what's coming next sometimes. But we see some things that are very clear. The demographic shifts in patient populations. How does RedSail technology kind of future plan, future-proof our pharmacies? And, what do you see coming down the pipeline, and how do you see RedSail Technologies being prepared?
But I mean, the easy answer is access. At some point, all technology gets outdated and end of life, right? And on a long enough time frame, that's true, right? If that weren't true, we'd all still be using a IBM 486 DX Turbo that I had in 1995. So access is part of how we future-proof the pharmacy by investing in technologies and capabilities and interfaces and things like that. And the other is simply, like a lot of the features that we build across, with PowerLine and working with pharma and, looking at how we interact with CPSN and payers, like the future of pharmacy isn't dispensing a commodity, right? Drugs are going to be around, but they're going to keep getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And playing the same spread game isn't something that's going to be viable 20 years from now. So pharmacies have to be able to drive revenue and value from other places. And I think we're taking a lot of big swings. I don't think all of them are going to pay off. But the fact that we're taking those swings gives us hope that pharmacy can be something more viable than just dispensing a product in the future.
Absolutely, man. Good answer. I'll let you guys get back to it. I know you guys have a lot going on with the whole crew of the RedSail Technologies team behind you. So I'll let you get back to your days. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and look forward to having you come on again. Maybe we can do this again in 6 months or something.
Absolutely. Thanks, Will.
All right. Thanks, Will.